Good afternoon. We're here today for an in-depth interview with Mr. Gregg Perry, Clockmaker, regarding clocks, watches, and the times we're in. Good afternoon, Greg.
Good afternoon. Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely. Well, we'll start off with what percentage of clocks of all types do you see come through compared with watches?
My particular shop, because I revere clocks much more, probably 20% watch and 80% clock. Yes. And of that, additional breakdown, these reproduction clocks, 20, 30 years, the Howard Miller types with the German mechanisms, uh, that's probably 50% of what I'm doing right now. And to my chagrin, but I prefer to do the 18th or 19th century tall clock or older if possible. But they just, and this is an area blessed with a lot of these clocks, but they just don't seem to find their way to me.
Well, that's
Uh,
unfortunate.
and I believe it's the individuals that have them. A lot of people have clocks that just don't run, and they're happy to maintain it that way.
Hmm. Could you briefly explain for us these different types of timepieces, the mechanical versus the quartz versus smart?
Oh, so we're talking about we're in watches now. Well, the mechanical are always revered. Um, and the watch has been around since around 1500, so it's been around a long time. um, we've had a heyday, and we're still probably riding very high with some makers in Switzerland, and particularly in Paris. And that could be for another video. But we've kind of hit an ultimate pinnacle of timekeeping with mechanical watches. um, then you go to the quartz watch, and unfortunately we could take an examples like a Rado. Here you have a watch that could run 14, 15, $1,800 retail, and it has a $1.99 quartz movement in it. I find it very hard to wear one and to even put another quartz movement in there, just even to touch them. I think it's a sham. And the smartwatches don't even register with me. I don't understand what they're for. I mean, time is all around us. It's just another excuse to put a computer on your body. Maybe we should just bury computers in their back of our necks or something. And so,
And why would someone prefer one type over the other, other than cost or?
well, the real aficionado is obviously collecting or trying to maintain from probably from a bequest situation, a mechanical watch that's been in the family for many years. Um, and anywhere from, my God, you see 1950, 1940 Timex, which are highly, highly collectible. No laughs out there, but a Timex, an old Timex, made extraordinarily well. Not great timekeepers, but not bad timekeepers also. And right up to the modern day Rolex. But again, the Rolex is just a mass produced thing. It's like to me, a Rolex is something like a Korean car, a Hyundai or a Kia car, automobile. And because unfortunately Rolex a number of years ago started producing their mechanisms within their watches in China. So any of you out there who bought a Rolex in the last 10 years, it's a new one, chances are you do have a Chinese mechanism in it. And that's very degrading. To pay $10,000 or more for something with a Chinese movement that probably runs 35 bucks. But that's what you do, because we all have to figure that Rolex is a huge supporter of tennis and motorsports around the world, and they have to offset their cost. So, but
Well, staying on the topic of movements and mechanical movements, what distinguishes a truly well-made mechanical movement from an average one?
um, type of brass used, bronze, bronze, brass, the type of materials used in general is going to dictate it. But precision, um, well performed task in building those movements, whether we're talking about a watch or a clock, uh, you find more precision type, thicker plates with regulator clocks, particularly going into the 19th century with regulators. And, the gears are very fine, the teeth are fine, but it just took, everything was made by hand as opposed to being made by a machine. And when I say a machine, not thinking like machines that I think that most would conjure up an image of, but a machine an antiquated machine on a bench from the 18th century could be a machine that it could turn out the same type of gear repetitively. All that individual does is make one gear for a clockmaker. That's a machine. So what we're talking about here is the high level that it's totally handmade, hand filed gears and things of that so forth. Yeah.
And is it easy to work on both clocks and watches?
No, I find it very, very difficult to switch from a clock to a watch because you're going from pure magnification to something generally not too much magnification needed, just say a tall case clock movement, which you could just use a headpiece. Don't really have to use any high magnifying loops, which you do with a watch. And to throw a little bit into the mix here, in addition, there's individuals that just fix watches that don't do the cases. They don't do polishing of all the components of the cases. And what I do is I do the cases also. So I do the wooden cases of marquetry and chinoiserie and um, any other decorative veneers that have been applied. So to do the shift from something that's very dusty in the workshop, the wood shop, to the clock studio, and then go to a minuscule situation as a watch, I find extraordinarily difficult to do. Yeah, and you have to do them on actually I'd have to do them on different days. I just can't mix them during the week.
And what mistakes do you see most often in poorly serviced watches or clocks?
Well, particularly in clocks, just we have a plethora of individuals here in America that shouldn't be touching clocks from the get-go. And we have, it's probably one of the, if you call this an industry, we have so few people doing clocks and watches in America. Let's just focus on clocks, because when we talk about watches, we have facilities. I think Rolex has two facilities in America, and they turn out classes every year. So they're putting watchmakers, and they're highly competent to work on those type of watches. Are they competent out of that class to work on pocket watches? Maybe not so, because a Rolex watch, you order, a gear or a lever or something from Rolex, and the next day it comes in FedEx. Whereas working on a pocket watch, primarily from the 19th century, late 18th century, you have to hand make components, or rebuilt small components, or put a tooth back on. So it's totally, totally different. The same with clocks. Um, Unless we're dealing with a modern day clock like a Keininger movement or a Hermele, or we can go someplace and find a few derelict movements of the similar style and use them as sacrificial movements and pull some components out that we need that have low mileage on them. Otherwise, dealing with anything from the 19th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, you have to actually make the movement or do the repair. The problem is we have very few people out there that are legitimate, and the repairs are really jury rig type affairs. So normally getting into a tall clock from any of those centuries, I have to undo a lot of repairs first, and then go back and do the basic service on the clock.
Well, sticking on that same topic, um, how has the quality and the number of skilled horologists or repair people changed over the past couple decades?
Over the past couple decades, 30, 40 years, it's gone down exponentially from the fact that if there's no demand or no desire to have clocks and watches, or it's a low desire. Um, perhaps it's just a desire for the wealthy, that they're the only ones having the very good clocks and watches restored and conserved. Whereas we have this just crazy dichotomy of the people that own these cheap Howard Miller clocks, and but that brings us into another situation where a lot of my contemporaries will, when somebody brings a Howard Miller clock in, 40 years old, never been serviced, literally worn out. Maybe not so much, but just could be just bushings and, maybe something else, a snail or some edges have been worn down that it won't go into strike. My contemporaries will tend just to throw the movement out and buy a new one. I absolutely refuse to do that. It's totally unethical. It's like putting a Ford motor in your Chevy. You just don't do it. You're there because you can fix things, you repair things, you restore things, and it's the easy way out. It's the easy way to make a buck. And there's a lot of my colleagues out there that really downplay their reputation by taking on this kind of work and just replacing mechanisms.
Mm. Now, to switch a little bit to the topic of the type of clients that you um, have your clients changed during your career?
Yeah, drastically. When I was in my late 20s and 30s, my clients were probably in their early 60s to 90s. And I often tell people when I speak that they taught me so much because the clocks that they have, they were very vested in. They knew all about them. They knew all about their origins, the makers. They were scholars in their clocks, whether it be one or 30. And some of my clients did have that many clocks. But unfortunately, in the last 15 to 20 years, it's segued into those clocks getting into the hands of very dangerous people. The dangerous people are their children or their grandchildren. And we're in such a disposable society today, nobody wants to fix anything. But if they get the urge to fix these clocks, to make them run, and we're saying fix because their parents or their grandparents weren't there to fix them. They were there to maintain a high level of quality and runnability of those clocks. The individuals today, if they want to fix one of these clocks that have been passed down through the family, they want to do it on the cheap, and they're always counting pennies. So they're for the most part the generalization of no one I really enjoy working for. They're for the most part a good part of my clientele, 40, 50, 60% are just qualityless people, and they're just disposable minded individuals. So I backed off considerably from doing a lot of those commissions because it's those kind of people you get involved with are not just cutting corners on that clock, but their lack of quality runs through their entire veins of their body. And they don't know how to operate it, they don't know how to adjust the time, and if it gets out of beat, so it's just a mess. And they're not the kind of people you want to get involved with. So I try to avoid them at all costs now. So
Well, that is
so hence
unfortunate.
hence I've yeah, but I've cut the work back, and at times I'll pick up more furniture to compensate for those low end individuals coming in with those type of clocks. And the interesting thing is, the low end individual tends to come in with a low end kind of clock, and it has nothing to do. We're not talking about Connecticut clocks here, but we're talking about cheap, grand merchandise clocks, all out of commercialism in the last 40, now 50 years. Yeah.
When you touched on this briefly on my next question, but what is the extent of your clients' working knowledge of the clocks that they bring in for repair?
Yeah, I think we just did touch on it. It's virtually nothing. I could fall over. I can't believe it. I mean, I have clients that come in that call the pendulum the weight, and the weights. He said my clock has three pendulums. So you got to be serious, man. With all the information exposed to you at the tip of your fingers on your phone or your computer, and I don't know. So being a little bit harsh here, but this is reality. This is not harshness. This is reality, and this is how we're living today. So unfortunately, I had a mission when I started this to conserve and to restore to the highest quality. And I've traveled all over the world the last 20 years to get degrees at the British Horological Institute, Wesleyan College, and the NAWCC School of Horology to give our historical materialism in timekeeping the highest level of restoration. And then I get faced with a totally different world of mass produced big box store type clocks coming in. So anyway, that's where we are today.
Let's bring you around to another topic as far as the value of clocks and watches, and has it fluctuated much over the years?
Yeah, it's considerable, and it's hard to imagine that I pull into a development that I'm there to look at a clock, and I'm looking at a five, six, $700,000 house, and a couple newer cars out there, probably 70, 80, 90. BMW, Mercedes sitting there, sometimes a Ferrari or two, and you go in there, and there's not a stick or a lick of piece of furniture worth anything over $10 in the whole place. And here is this clock that probably has a value of $100. Again, we're back to a Howard Miller clock. So, but I think the question was, has value changed? Am I correct? Or
Correct.
correct? Um, yes. So the value of even the better clocks of all clocks, because of the qualitylessness of the individuals that own them or have bequested them, um, and it's so drastic, it's almost exponential. So a clock that's sold somewhere around 2000, let's say a British tall clock, through a maker I follow considerably. Um, I know someone who bought one for $12,000, and he only made about 15 in his lifetime. That was a fairly low production for a British clockmaker, but nevertheless, 20 years later, that clock is selling for eight, $900, $1,000. I've seen three other versions of that clock by the same maker. So it's telling you the just incredible drop of value. Is it worldwide? Absolutely worldwide. We live in a qualityless situation today. It doesn't matter if we're in France, we're in Italy, we're in England. Um, Obviously, here in America, the value of the American clocks is a little bit better. Um, the value meaning the dollar value, and I'm not going to extrapolate on the quality value, but the dollar value of American clocks is higher here in America, and it's really based on regional. You could have a region, just say Wilmington, Delaware. That clock is going to pull 20% more than anywhere else in the country if it was made there. Um, and even it works on a statewide level too. So if you have a clock made in, say, in the state of Pennsylvania, as opposed to in the state of South Dakota, it's going to be a 20% up in Pennsylvania if it's bought or found at an auction there. But the bottom line is these things have plummeted in price, and when people buy these, uh, I was once telling about how it used to be a Israel. I was talking with the Don Sack, uh, and Don Sack has a series of books out on furniture, and Good, Best, and Better, and some other ones. And the Philadelphia 5 drawer chest, the typical, the quintessential with bracket OG feet, quarter columns, 34 inches wide. It is tiny as far as width goes, but it is proportionally perfect. Um, they still come up at auction, maybe 7, 8, 10 a year. And I've had clients that purchase them, say, "Oh, that's a nice chest. I think I'll purchase it," throwing Craftsman tools in his garage. And when I get to it, I'll do a refinish job on it. So that's with that devalue comes a devalued mind of how to maintain things and how to restore things. So they have no respect when you're buying something much cheaper than not.
Well, more specifically to a tall case or grandfather clock, is it a good time to purchase a tall case clock? And are there better auctions to look for either purchasing or selling?
Yeah, it's an excellent time to get a grandfather clock if you like the English, British, or French variety. Uh, Prices, I'm just waiting to hit bottom on prices, and I've been watching this go down for the last 25 years. I don't think it's there yet. So I mean, you can get a good Scottish tall clock or British tall clock for $300-400, which used to cost around $3,000, and the same for the American clock. But there's a few makers in America, as in England, that get blown up well out of proportion. And then when people with a few extra dollars in their pocket hear about it, then they'll tango at auctions and put something well up into the six figures if that's what it is. But it only takes somebody out there, and auctions are funny because when the auction house uses certain words and the description is rare and one of just a handful that a maker made, and it can put everything up 20, 30, 40%. So a lot has to do with the auction house and the auction house it's at too, the reputation of that house. You could take a similar clock at a firehouse auction on a Saturday afternoon, and the same clock, same maker, going to Sotheby's, and that auction clock could go for maybe $300-400. And if it went with the Sotheby's approval saying that they think it's a decent timepiece, it could go in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. So anywhere from 3 to 4 to up to $10,000. Quite a spread. So to say that one house has it over another, and the big houses are Sotheby's, Bonhams, um, and we have some up and coming houses now that Christie's, we'll throw Christie's in there, but like Doyle of New York, and they're the international houses, and then you have your regional houses, which is Pook and Pook over in Pennsylvania, and they're a lot more Americana based. So you'll find your better values there. So that helps to where you should take your clock too, to what specific auctions should be looked into to get the best value out of your clock for sale.
Interesting. And along those lines of the value of clocks or watches, does the Antiques Roadshow provide legitimate information for viewers for clocks and watches?
No, it's very bogus stuff, and it's all cinema. It's all gadgets and gizmos. Like people buy new cars today, they get rid of their car every couple of years because it flips upside down or something. So that's the kind of affair that the Antiques Roadshow is, and it's just meant for good entertainment. But that's not the core reason. It's almost like our government today. What's the core reason it's doing certain things? And the Antiques Roadshow is that it brings a lot of antique dealers in, these quote experts, and I'm not saying they're not experts, but they're slicker than slick. So they're there to say, "Hey, I'm coming to your town, 5 Fridays from tomorrow." They show up at your town, and you have a couple hundred people out in the parking lot with stuff, and a lot of the good stuff never makes it, or for the duration of the American Antiques Roadshow, never makes it to the screen. It's bought with rolls and wads of cash right in the parking lot, and telling Mrs. Jones that it's pretty good, but it's not going to make the cut to get on TV. But I think I have someone I could buy, and I think you would be really happy. And they look at this guy as the expert. They believe him. They take the money, and they get bamboozled in the parking lot. So that's kind of been the premise of that, and that was meant by two individuals that are brothers in the antiques world a number of years ago. They set out to kind of emulate the British Antiques Roadshow, and but the British Antiques Roadshow is not based on the greed that's found in the parking lot out back. So,
Hmm.
and,
Another
and hence the when you see a person go there, they coach them. They say, okay, the value is $1,200 on the paperweight, and I want you to say it with enthusiasm. No, we got to retape that again. Oh my God, look at the value of this. I never knew Aunt May had such a thing like that. So it's all theater.
Another organization that I wanted to get your opinion on, the NAWCC. What exactly is it, and does it provide value to members?
The NAWCC is a club. It's an organization. It started as a club. It could be the 40s or 50s, and there was a group of individuals out in the central Pennsylvania where they 5, 10 individuals collected watches and clocks, and basically their wives wanted to throw them out of the house. They had so much stuff in the house, so they purchased a building, put it in there, and they all formed a pack, and they put it together for display purposes, and eventually formed an organization. And it's our only organization for clocks and watches, a legitimate organization that has a legitimate um, horological museum, and it's a very good museum. Uh, so it's for someone to experience timekeeping from sundials right up until present quote smartwatch or lack of, it's a great idea, and you can get the full timeline of time. Um, I feel that they could do a much better job. They once had the school there where I went. It's difficult time getting legitimate teachers, good teachers, very difficult, and getting the students in general for the last 15, 18 years. Uh, when I was in the class, if you had 8 to 10 people in the class, and that doesn't pay the teacher's salary and his health care to stand there for a year. So you need more than 8 to 10 people. So what we're saying here, there's not a lot or enough interest in the area of horology. Um, Everybody gets excited when they see a clock or watch sometimes, but to actually sit there at the bench on a repetitive basis and do it. And today it's not so much that, it's dealing with some of the wacky public that I have to deal with every day. Um, I mean, if you don't know a pendulum from a weight, we have a problem right from the beginning, and we shouldn't be talking. So
You mentioned briefly about Connecticut-made clocks. Could you give us a little more information on what are the strong points of Connecticut-made clocks?
well, the strong point is they invented somebody invented rolling mills, or it migrated to Connecticut. So the ability to cast brass plates and components, as opposed to rolling it. Rolling it can harden it 4 to 5 times as of casting. So these Connecticut movements of the 19th century get extreme longevity um, out of the wear between the bushed areas.
Interesting. And another specific clock I'd like your opinion on, the Rittenhouse clock at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Is it legitimate or more of a folly?
It's a grand folly, and but that's for another video when we talk about Mr. Rittenhouse. Mr. Rittenhouse was a grand folly too. Mr. Rittenhouse has a lot of followers. He's the one that supposedly made that clock. And from our quick, pointy perspective here, there's no legitimate information anywhere. And even though there was a book written by Donald Fenimore of Winter Tour, you go through the book and there's no legitimate evidence that this man was ever a clockmaker. No way, no how. That Rittenhouse clock, I was asked to come in. It's recommended by the NAWCC to come in and look and assess that clock, the Rittenhouse clock. And it's a clock with a huge clock dial. I mean, the clock stands over 9 feet high, and it has an Ori and has uh, multiple independent dials around the perimeter in each of the quadrants. It has different dials doing different things. And it's a clock that was made up. It wasn't made specifically. You can almost see where, if you understand, John Harrison and the longitude problem, he started with his first clock movement, and he saw the problem, and instead of going back and re-engineering the clock from almost new, he starts to compensate for that problem, and that problem is still inside of the clock, but he got over that problem, and he's to another phase to make the clock more accurate. So it's almost like the Rittenhouse clock. I mean, so these things were added. Maybe they started with a clock dial, then they added an Ori, and then they said we're gonna add musical tunes to it, and we're gonna do this and that. So it's something that was just added onto, and you could buy these components all broken down from Liverpool back in the late 18th century, the mid to late 18th century, because Liverpool was the cottage industry, and they had a catalog of manufacturing and manufacturers of components. If you want to add a peal of bells, you want to add a chime barrel to these clocks, and that's what happened with that Rittenhouse clock. So it's interesting because it's so unique, but if it's something that wasn't kind of conceived as new and put together all as one instead of just adding, it's like taking a car and making a hot rod out of it and putting different wheels and different hood scoop on it. So that's what they did with that clock. So
Interesting. Well, I wanted to wrap up with one more question for you on your opinion. What are your preferences of clocks to work on or possibly not work on?
well, my preference is the 18th century tall clock because of its innate tall beauty. To me, it replicates the human figure with a brain, and can have beautiful dials. They can have brass dials, painted dials. The hands are masterpieces in themselves, and the mechanism itself, you know, can be multifunctional, not just timekeeping. So, and the case, so the beauty of the case. So put that in, and that's my preference. Uh, but I do like my choice of wood is old walnut, English walnut in a case. It's warm, it's romantic. This toffee chocolate box color that it's reminiscent of that the British are famous. So you can't fake patina, and that patina over almost 300 years is just marvelous to look at. It's again, it's very warm. And then you have the chinoiserie and the gilding on certain cases and the marquetry. So the tall case clock, second to none. The American tall case clock I'm not as excited about because there's been so much faking done on those. The Americans like their tall case clocks nice and dirty, and the antique dealers have created that persona. So it's easy to fake and to add things and to subtract things, to fix things on American clocks because everybody says, is it an old finish? Is it a dirty finish? What kind of finish is on there? Oh, I think I'll bid on that then. And it puts the value up. So quite different from the British clock that wants to come out looking almost like the day it was when it came out of the workshop in 1710, but maybe with a little bit of patina. And then if we take this to the French tall clocks, they go all the way down to the wood when they're doing a restoration conservation, and they come back exactly like looking like new. So three different perspectives. The clocks that I don't recognize, 400-day clocks, these Le Couture clocks from, it's a French name. It's dealing with barometric pressure and the 400-day clocks. So there are a couple that I stay away from. And, some of the Black Forest clocks, I've been doing the wooden clock movements for about 15 years. I don't take any more of those in. They're full of problems. And it's not so much the clock is the problem once it's restored, but the owners, a lot of the owners that do those bring them in. They want to run them full time, and it's just not highly recommended because there's too many things to go wrong with those clocks. It's it's amazing that clock from the early 19th century, that clock mechanism, all out of wood, is still here, and I think it could be run properly by run at certain holidays and certain functions around the house, and I think that's how we should do it. And again, a lot of the Connecticut clocks. A clock has to talk to me for me to be interested in touching it and trying to save it. And a lot of the Connecticut clocks just don't have that. They have no proportion, and they have a lot of these figural scenes. It just makes no sense when the case and the scene, the figural component of that supersedes the clock movement by 90%. And lastly, I don't do Korean clocks, the 30-day. They're not worth taking that 31-day spring out, and they're rubbish. So,
Well, we greatly appreciate your time today, Greg. And do you have any other comments?
yeah, I think some of the members of the NAWCC and some of them are, what I don't like about them is they swap movements out. But this is brutal honesty of where this trade is going, and instead of like the Clock Museum trying to put more time in recruiting young people to get them interested in timekeeping and how to fix timekeeping and become clockmakers. I think that's where the time is. And if we look at Winter Tour Museum, they're through the gate is off exponentially. I mean, they're off 50, 60, 70% the last 10 or 15 years. So it's attaching the young people to their history that they grew up, the historic materialism, and to get them excited about their past and where they've come from. And that's what these museums are absolutely failing at today. So, and another thing is, I want to add this, that, there's a lot of majority of clockmakers out there are not trained at all across this country, and there's not a lot of them, but they're not trained, and some of the work they're doing is just doesn't even want to be mentioned. That illegitimate repairs, and there's just not a lot of sharing of information. We do have some clock groups that are okay, some small ones, but you would think in a profession that you don't have a lot of people in, whether it be watch or clock, the people would be very happy to throw and help each other out. Because I was in Paris for 2.5 years as an apprentice in 5 different disciplines, and I just reveled at the camaraderie that the French would have for one another in the same field. They could be competitors. There could be 3 marquetry studios in a row, and one guy is having a hard time, literally 1, 2, 3, right next to each other, 3 buildings. And one individual is having a hard time, whether he's peeling back the marquetry off an old case, and his competitor will help him. So, and that's how it should be. We're here with a common goal to save horological objects. And anyway, but thanks again for stopping by.